bhavatu sahano punaktu saha viryam karavavahai tejasvina vaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om. Peace, peace, peace be unto us. Peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, good evening and namaste, everyone. Welcome to our Wednesday evening class on the book Divine Grace by Swami Ranganathananda. We read and discuss the book among ourselves, which is the meaning of studying the art of spirituality together. Of course, our very capable and sweet reader is Swami. And before we begin, are there any comments or questions left over from last week that we need to address before we go ahead? All right, dear. Please tell us where we are. And so for those of us who don't know, where are we in the book?
And we are on page 60, verse 21. We read a part of it last time, but we'll start again over there.
Please, yes.
Okay. And also I shifted to a different rooms where the network is kind of like off and on. So if you cannot hear me, please let me know and I'll shift to the other.
No, this is so far so good.
Oh, good. Okay, number 21. Divine grace and the philosophy of non-effort. Divine grace, though particularly associated with bhakti religions, centered in an all-loving personal God, including Sufism, has also the highest place in non-personalistic philosophies and religions like Advaita Vedanta, Zen, and Taoism. In these latter, the devotee experiences divine grace, often through the Guru, as in the Viveka Chudamani verse quoted earlier. A very popular verse in the Advaita Vedanta tradition of India says, "It is only through the grace of God, which saves one from great fear, that wise men experience even the inclination towards Advaita." Taoism and Zen speak of perfection in terms of a life of spontaneity and naturalness, beyond all effort and struggle, beyond all intellectuality. This is also the state of man basking in divine grace, according to Vedanta, which presents the divine as the very self of man and all creativity as the unfolding of this dimension.
Okay, let's pause there. And is there any comment from anyone from their own wisdom or experience, or any concern or question that any of this raises? All right, dear, please read on.
I think we had discussed once before the use of the word unfolding in this context is something that is worthy of reflection. Yeah.
Yes, well, this is what the divine being is doing according to the saints. The divine being is unfolding itself through the manifestation of Maya. Through this, I am one, I shall body myself forth as many. This is to experience itself and unfold itself in its many, many dimensions. But this Swami just uses the word dimension here. But notice the word creativity. Creativity. The divine is infinitely creative. And this is what we see all around us in both the positive and the dark side. So the divine is constantly unfolding itself, and we are the instrument. We are the instruments of that unfoldment, according to the saints. We are the way the divine experiences itself in its infinite aspects. As of yesterday, according to the ethnologists and the statisticians, the Earth's population is now 8 billion. Now, this is a remarkable number when you consider that according to these same scientists, the population of the Earth in 1927, not quite 100 years ago, was 2 billion. 2 billion to 8 billion in 100 years. Now, there's some significance to this, speaking of unfoldment, according to Vashishta. Vashishta, the great sage who was the teacher of Lord Rama, when Lord Rama was a prince, the Yoga Vashishta, those 30,000 shlokas, are his teachings to Rama over a 3-day period. One of the things that he told Rama was that the sign that an age is coming to its end is that there will be a rapid increase and a very large increase in the Earth's population. And Rama asks him, well, why is that? And Vashishta responds, it is because Yama, the god of death, the god of death as understood in Sanatana Dharma, the god of death is meditating. And when he awakens, a great deal of death takes place. According to these same scientists, the population will top out at 12 billion, another 4 billion. But if we think that we've gone from 2 billion to 8 billion in 100 years, then it's only another 50 years to where there will be 12 billion. And so I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm not trying to persuade you to anything. I'm only saying that this is some of this unfoldment that is taking place. And this unfoldment will result in a very different kind of population number in 100 years from now, say. And it's according to Vashishta, the dawn of a new age. Well, we understand from what was said by Sri Ramakrishna himself, by Holy Mother, and by Swami Vivekananda as well as Brahmananda, that Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother, coming as Ishvara and Ishwari, the avatar and the goddess Saraswati, are the signal of the dawn of the it's the signal that the dark age of Kali Yuga is ending and the bright age of Satyug, or the golden age, is dawning. Vivekananda gave us a hint about how long this process would take when he said, I have given them enough. He said this shortly before he left the body. I have given them enough for 1,500 years. So this overlapping dying away of the Kali Yuga and brightening, opening out of the Satyug, or golden age, this gives us a hint this may take 1,500 years, and he said that, of course, in probably 1901 or early 1902. So some time has already passed. Any comments or questions from anyone about any of that was said about what is meant by this unfolding? All right, dear, please go ahead.
Shankaraji,
Yes, Balaji.
what is he meant by non-personalistic philosophies?
Advaita, well, he defines it as Advaita, Zen, Taoism. They don't, and for that matter, Sankhya, they don't recognize a personal God. So there is no such thing as a personal God in those religions. They do not recognize avatar. They do not recognize incarnation, or and they don't practice any form of worship of any image of any kind. Islam, of course, could also be included in this, although there is some overlap in some worship Muhammad, praise his name, as an avatar, or they see Allah as a personal God, a God with whom you can have a personal relationship. So I think that's why the Swami didn't include Islam in that list that he said. Does that get it, Bala? Or is there more?
Yeah, but Advaita is all first-person experience.
No, but that doesn't mean its personality means the personal God, not your personal experience. So that's not what he means by that.
Oh.
He's talking about the God, the religions, the devotional religions, that the devotional, and for that matter, the karma-based religions, like most of Buddhism, the Zen and some other small sects of Buddhism are Hinayana, or small boat. Most are Mahayana. They worship the Buddha as an avatar, as a personal God. And so even Buddhism can be included in that. At least the Mahayana schools of Buddhism can be included in that devotional school. So he's not talking about your personal experience. Our personal experience is there in all of the methods of realization. Some of them are involved with a personalistic devotional aspect, that is to say, some form of the divine. Brahman or the void, as is defined in Buddhism, the Hinayana schools, there is no, and the Buddha himself would not talk about a personal God. So this is what's meant by the. Would you read that again, please, Swayam, so that we know what we're talking about? Bala
Sure,
was reflecting on that.
sure. Uh, I'll just start from the beginning of that 21. Divine grace, though particularly associated with bhakti religions centered in an all-loving personal God, including Sufism, has also the highest place in non-personalistic philosophies and religions like Advaita Vedanta, Zen, and Taoism.
So does that get it, Bala? Do you now, is the distinction clear?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So you can go ahead and read on from there, so
Yes.
that it's worth reviewing.
Right. In these latter, the devotee experiences divine grace often through the Guru, as in the Viveka Chudamani verse quoted earlier. A very popular verse in the Advaita Vedanta tradition of India says, "It is only through the grace of God, which saves one from great fear, that wise men experience even the inclination towards Advaita." Taoism and Zen speak of perfection in terms of a life of spontaneity and naturalness, beyond all effort and struggle, beyond all intellectuality. This is also the state of man basking in divine grace according to Vedanta, which presents the divine as the very self of man and all creativity as the unfoldment of this dimension.
The very self of man, that's what's pointed out by the four Mahavakyas. Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, and so on. And so this is what's pointed to as Brahman, or the divine, is the very self. That is the very self. But notice that that's a capital S. It doesn't mean the stardust spacesuit which comes and goes. That's the garment for the self. Okay.
Both result in a morally and spiritually high life of work and achievement through non-effort. Taoism distinguishes between rational knowledge and intuitional knowledge, and intuitional knowledge and no knowledge or sage knowledge. Says R.G.H. Siu, the Chinese scientist at the MIT USA, in his Tao of Science, rational knowledge is rational only because it is obtainable through reason. The others, obtainable through means other than reason, are not irrational. They are extra-rational. Broadly speaking, the intellectual progress in an advancement in concepts.
Wait a minute. You added. You
I
added
said the.
yeah, right. Broadly speaking, intellectual progress.
Broadly speaking, intellectual progress is an advancement in concepts which man had formulated and handed down. But let us dissect the statement further. We should contrast rational knowledge and intuitive knowledge. The role of discovery is quite different in these two forms. In rational knowledge, it plays a prominent part. This is where science has contributed greatly. In intuitive knowledge, discovery of the patent office variety plays
Patent office. You know,
patent.
where you register your patents.
Uh-huh.
Discoveries of the patent office variety. In other
Hmm.
words,
Okay,
the result of intellectual and rational uh,
right.
investigation and discovery.
Okay. In intuitive knowledge, discovery of the patent office variety plays a minor role. Science has not accelerated human development in this area. If anything, she may have dulled man's sensibilities to intuitive riches by her passive and, in some instances, antagonistic attitudes.
Hang on just a minute. I want to repeat something I've said before. This is what he's gesturing to is what Einstein commented on when he said the left mind, the rational mind, the mind of the intellectual reasoning and this kind of discovery. The left mind is the servant. The right mind, the intuitive mind, is the genius. We have created a society that worships the servant and ignores the genius. And that's exactly what Dr. Dr. Sui is saying here. So he says, uh, if anything, start there again, if anything.
Okay. If anything, she, meaning science, may have dulled man's sensibilities to intuitive riches. If anything, science, she, may have dulled man's sensibilities to intuitive riches by her passive and, in some instances, antagonistic attitudes.
And oftentimes, reductionistic science is antagonistic toward the intuitive grasp of things, even though Einstein said it was the only way he ever discovered anything. He said, the greatest gift I have been given is the gift of fantasy, which is totally intuitive. That's what he said. And that's how he said he discovered all of the things that he later formulated, translated into the mathematics of the left mind. You know, E equals mc squared is a kind of language. It's languages of the left mind. And this is one of Einstein's most famous equations, saying that energy and matter are one and the same in two different forms. E equals mc squared. Well, the notation of mathematics was developed in order to create a very precise language, because verbal language, the language of words, is very imprecise. So, but it's still a language. And so he translated the intuitive knowledge that he gained through this gift of fantasy to, he translated that into the language of mathematics, and for that matter, the language of words, explaining the general and special relativity theories and so on. So this is what's being talked about here, that science is sometimes antagonistic toward this aspect that Einstein was pointing to.
I heard in a talk, I don't remember if it was Sadhguru or one of the Swamis, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he was saying that the human brain has evolved very little from the time of the chimpanzee. Now the humans can, chimpanzee could do certain things, and now the human can, it's a chimpanzee which can operate a smartphone.
Uh, it's the fact is that 60,000 years ago there was a very important genetic mutation. According to the geneticists, this is what happened. The corpus callosum, that tissue, that communication bridge between the two hemispheres of the brain, was smaller and less active 60,000 years ago. And there was a genetic mutation. The corpus callosum uh, gained in size and in activity. This is an assertion that is said to be proven by the scientists, and it led to our having a completely different attitude about the left mind, the left brain. Uh, a great book was written on this called The Origin of Consciousness, Modern Consciousness. He just left out the word modern. The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. If you read his, this was a doctoral dissertation that became a book. If you read his assertion, it was that human beings experienced the left mind as a voice speaking to them before this growth of the corpus callosum. And so you can see this, he says, reflected in the Vedas, which are said to be Shruti, something heard. That doesn't mean they're not true. It just means that they are something heard, not reasoned out. And he also says it's very much reflected in the Greek and Babylonian and other epics, and in very much in the oldest aspects of the Egyptian religion. So 60,000 years ago, we began to experience the two hemispheres of our brain differently. And that's when the dominance of the, according to the scientists, not just this fellow whose name I don't remember, but you can find the book, The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. But other scientists, including Jill Bolte Taylor, say that the left brain dominance that has come about was a result of this growth of the corpus callosum, and are no longer experiencing the left mind as, so to speak, the voice of God or gods, but as the self of ourself, but its smallest self. Any comments or questions on any of that? All right, dears, please let's go on.
All that is intuitively known has been recognized by persons living before, in other settings perhaps, but practiced to equal perfection. The silent and formless depth of life had passed many times before the mind of man in its full sweep. This type of knowledge is not enkindled by mathematical formulae and scientific treatises. Logicians deprecate the fuzziness of intuition. The intuitionists decry the strictures of logic. Actually, there is no exclusiveness of one over the other. Discursive reasoning is not possible without intuition.
Aha. This is what Einstein said.
Yet, even intuitive knowledge itself is not the ultimate search. Sooner or later, we hesitate at the limits of rational and intuitive knowledge. Our faltering mind must then seek repose and cure in what it cannot know. At this point, the concept of sage knowledge or no knowledge is introduced by the Taoists. This is really not knowledge in the ordinary sense. Knowledge, as we understood it in the West, involves the selection of a certain event or quality as the object of knowledge. Sage knowledge does not do so. It concerns an understanding of what the East calls Wu or non-being. The Wu transcends events and qualities. It has no shape, no time. As a result, it cannot be the object of ordinary knowledge. At the highest level of cognizance, the sage forgets distinction between things. He lives in the silence of what remains in the undifferentiable whole. An important difference exists between having no knowledge and having no knowledge. The former is merely a state of ignorance, and the latter is one of ultimate enlightenment and universal sensibilities.
In other words, samadhi. This is what's being discussed here is samadhi. This is the way we understand it. Going beyond all, this is because what is there cannot be said in words. It is not knowledge in any ordinary sense, not of the left mind or the right mind, not the rational and lingual in language, or the intuitive, or the language of images. Well, in any event. So it's beyond both of those.
Nevertheless, it is precisely its ineffability that lends force to its reality. The mysteries of nature appear to be mysterious only to those who refuse to participate in them. With rational knowledge, the scientist is a spectator of nature. With no knowledge, he becomes a participant in nature. There is a communion of understandings. To plumb to the depths of no knowledge, one must rely on his own ineffable awareness of the ineffable. There has been much groping in the West for this concept of no knowledge. It is unfortunate, however, that considerable effort has been wasted in rationalizing no knowledge or opposing it competitively with rational knowledge. With rational knowledge, one is in tune with the scientific man. With intuitive knowledge added, one is in tune with the total man. With no knowledge added, one is in tune with nature.
Aha! So we're getting to this Swami's assertion that to be totally and fully human is to be totally and fully divine, in tune with everything, no longer limited to the two minds, the rational and the intuitive, but having gone beyond them to this other form of sage knowledge. And then it says, so read that last sentence again, please.
With rational knowledge, one is in tune with the scientific man. With intuitive knowledge added, one is in tune with the total man. With no knowledge added, one is in tune with nature.
Now, nature would be capitalized by Vivekananda, and by that he would mean all of being that we can in any way experience. Another word for it would be the Divine Mother or Maya. So what he's saying is that with no knowledge added, one is in tune with all that can be known. Any comments or questions before we move on?
Yeah, Brother Shankara, can you explain a little bit about intuitive knowledge? What is like intuitive knowledge?
When you sit for meditation and you practice your japam to the point where you have sunk below the mind that is speaking to us, the verbal mind, the rational mind, the left mind. You sink into a kind of silence. In that silence, there is a deeper kind of knowledge about who you are and what is. This is your developing witness awareness as you begin to identify with something deeper within yourself. This is intuitive knowledge. And it's because you've gone beyond your waking mind to your active subconscious mind, which is where all that you've learned before, which becomes our intuitive, that's what gives rise to our intuitions. We have been so much is known by the active subconscious and the latent subconscious or unconscious mind. So much is known there. This is one way of saying is that you're getting close to what the ahamkara, that which really makes individuality or a sense of being, and buddhi, the ability to tell one thing from another. We think that that happens in our left mind, but scientists have proven that that's not true. It happens before it appears in our left mind. They've proven this absolutely with their brain studies. That the knowledge appears from somewhere. They still haven't established how or why or where it comes from, but it appears. And it appears some very measurable number of milliseconds before it appears in our left or cognitive mind. So this is the intuitive knowledge. Now, what is sage knowledge? Sage knowledge is what we discover when even that stops. When our breathing stops entirely, and we go into yet another frame of reference. This is samadhi. Now, it doesn't have to be full savikalpa samadhi before it's samadhi. It is this sinking into the silence where, as Meister Eckhart says, this is the true language of God is silence. All else is a poor imitation. So there's rational knowledge, the knowledge of the left mind. There's intuitive knowledge, the knowledge of the right mind, and the more superficial aspects of heart knowledge. But then we go below that, and we experience something else. Now it's still an experience. It's still within time, space, and causation. Does that get it, Swami?
Yes, it does. I do want to give like an example and dissect and see what knowledge it is. Over time, I guess because of my spiritual endeavors, I've not had any, mystical experience or anything like that, but behaviorally, I get less compelled to defend my opinions or beliefs, or it's easier for me to unless what somebody says is really harmful to me, I don't feel that compulsion to be right. I'm more easily accepting that's that person's point of view, and I don't necessarily have to change, but I don't have to convince the other one either. Is that like rational knowledge?
No, that comes from your intuitive knowledge, dear. This becomes you develop conviction. This is the dawn and beginning, strong beginning of Shraddha. This is what is meant by Shraddha. As you just said, you feel no compulsion or very little compulsion to defend yourself, because what you know is not based on some argument, some logical, some rational, some debate. You simply know it. Somehow you know it. And so you have conviction in it. You are absolutely, it simply comes from spiritual practice. And I'm so glad to hear this. Now, you say you haven't had any mystical experience. That is a mystical experience, dear. It's the silence that you've entered that gives you, it's that voice from that silence that comes from making japa. And it only happens when we do it regularly and stay with it. Then these things begin to emerge in us. And that's why it's said the only true measure of spiritual progress is change in behavior. You just described spiritual progress by your change in behavior. You no longer feel compelled to convince anyone. Well, first of all, it's because you intuitively know you can't convince them. They have to learn it for themselves if they're going to learn it at all. And there's no reason that they should have to learn it.
And I don't know if I'm right either, so how?
It's not, yes, it's not a question of right and wrong, is it?
Right.
It's not that's just simply not the question.
Right.
It's something that you know. So it doesn't matter if it's different from what they know.
Mm.
It doesn't matter, as you say, don't feel compelled to convince them of anything. First of
And
all,
neither be convinced.
say it again.
I said, neither do I feel compelled to be convinced.
No, of course not. Because you're getting your source of knowledge is from a different place. You don't need to be convinced of anything because you know where your knowledge comes from. It comes from your spiritual practice.
Because in the past, I used to feel whenever there was a conflicting opinion, I would be all over myself, dissecting, am I thinking right? Now I don't have that compulsion.
Yes, glorious. That's just glorious, dear. Wonderful. Let this flourish. Anything else from anyone while we're paused?
Actually, I don't remember where I read. See, some people compare this intuitive knowledge as like a third eye, or the eye of the wisdom and all these things. But what they say, see, sometimes you might be struggling for any kind of thing, with a rational knowledge and you cannot come up with any kind of an answer, all of a sudden something strikes in your mind, that moment.
Yes.
Our moment is the intuitive knowledge.
Yes.
That is what,
And it comes to us as we're just waking up in the morning.
yes,
It
that
comes
is
to us.
what, yes.
It comes to us when we're in the shower. And it'll come to us when we're making japa, when we're driving. These are the three places that it has been experienced here. And Einstein much prized those moments between sleep and waking. There's a name for it, I've forgotten what it is, but he actually sought it. He actually had a method for seeking it. And when he was, he would do it in the afternoon. Instead of napping, he would sit in an armchair, easy chair, with his feet up on a hassock. He would hold a spoon, a big spoon in his left hand, and there would be a pie pan on the floor below that spoon. As he was going from waking into sleep, there would be those moments. But then he would go fully asleep and his hand would open, release the spoon. It would drop on the pie pan, wake him up. And he would repeat the process. This is how much he prized that aha moment that you were just talking about, Balakrishna. Yes, and he sought it. He actively sought it as a spiritual practice. Einstein very much believed in God, very much. He was not a scientist that disbelieved in the personal God. He believed in the active personal God. And this is why he so objected to the findings of quantum mechanics when he said, I do not believe that God plays dice with the world. He said, you just simply haven't learned enough yet to understand what you're seeing. And his conviction was absolute. I mean, he never budged from that position.
The other thing, the last three lines, this is what Sri Ramakrishna says, when you're tuning as a total man, that is jnani, and with no knowledge added, one is in tune with nature, that is vijnani.
Yes, exactly. Yes, now you understand that all of nature is also the divine play. And this is the position of the bhakta that has gone beyond the preliminary stages of bhakta and lives in a state of awe and wonder at the creativity of universe. And it's incredible, infinite manifestations. And when I say incredible, I'm not using a word loosely. We simply cannot, with our left mind, credit what we actually see. Our left mind doesn't understand it. It's like trying to understand it with the left mind, as Swami Prabhupada said, is like trying to empty the ocean of consciousness with a teaspoon. So we react in awe and wonder and reverence. And this is the dawn of Vijnana. Thank you, Bala. That was right on the money. Anything else from anyone before we read on? Well, we've got a few minutes left. Let's read for another 6 or 7 minutes, dear. starting with nature in that context. You're muted. We can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Nature in that context means what Indian and Chinese thought understood as the whole of existence. Discussing the profound Taoist concept of inaction or non-effort, what the Gita calls akarma, and relating its significance to the concept of decentralization in management, CU says, to be intimately versed in the technique of decentralization, the executive must have a sense of the Taoist doctrine of inaction. Accomplishment is attained through the art of doing nothing. This is a somewhat difficult idea to put across because so many people are quick to confuse it with loafing. But we may get a glimpse of the notion from Huangzi. The student of knowledge aims at learning day by day. The student of Tao aims at losing day by day. By continual losing, one reaches doing nothing. By doing nothing, everything is done. He who conquers the world often does so by doing nothing. When one is compelled to do something, the world is already beyond his conquering. Let us compare this Eastern wisdom with another piece of profound Eastern wisdom given in the Gita, chapter 4, verse 18. He who sees inaction in action and action in inaction, he is the wisest among men. He is the perfect yogi, the doer of all action.
Read that again, please. This is one of the seminal verses in the Gita about what the highest form of wisdom truly is.
He who sees inaction in action and action in inaction, he is the wisest among men. He is the perfect yogi and doer of all action.
The perfect yogi is no longer an ordinary human being and becomes one with the doer, capital D, doer. And that's what he means by the doer of all action.
For me, it's easier to grasp the inaction in action. So basically, you do the action, but don't take on the doership. So you're calm from within, in action, if you will. But it's a little bit harder to wrap my understanding around the action in inaction. So, for example, if I'm sitting and
it's because it's beyond the left mind here. You said wrap your mind around it. It simply will not. It doesn't fit within our intellectual definition of wisdom. It goes beyond even the intuitive knowledge to that third form of knowledge, that sage form of knowledge, which is why it leads to the definition of the wisest of men. Yes, we can understand the words to a degree, but that's not what's meant by wisdom here. The wisest of men and the perfect yogi has gone beyond these. And so We shouldn't try to understand in an intellectual sense these sayings from the Gita. What does Krishna tell us over and over? Over and over. Only through meditation will you understand. Only through meditation will you truly grasp the reality. Practice, practice, practice. That's what he tells us over and over. To be perfect in any of the yogas, we must practice meditation. Is all that clear? Is there any comment or discussion about that?
No, that's quite clear for me. Thank you.
Anything else from anyone?
You can also think the other way around, not other way around, I would say, as long as you understand you are the Atman, so you are not doing anything. It is what Sri Ramakrishna says, I am the machine and you are the operator.
Exactly.
You have to come to the understanding you are the operator and the body and mind are the machine.
Yes, but the U is a capital Y.
Yes.
It's not any of the forms of mind that we've been talking about.
Yes.
It's beyond action. So you're right, Bala. That is the connection. So we'll start next time with discussing the philosophy, starting there. Probably we'll go back and read what was just read so that we read into it. Anything else before we close?
Brother Shankara, I have a question not related to this, but is the center collecting warm clothes for the needy again this winter?
Yes, we are, dear heart. You're right on the money. We start nominally. We start on Thanksgiving Day with Holy Mother's Helping Hands. That's our annual effort to raise money for the Atlanta Community Food Bank. For every dollar that they're given, they provide 4 meals. So this is really something, so, or even more than that. I've forgotten the formula. In any event.
No, you are right. It's they provide four meals per dollar. That's how they.
So the Atlanta Community Food Bank, the center gave them $1,250 that was raised last year. We're hoping to raise even more this year because the need is greater. The need is greater than it has ever been. I don't know, ever been. It's probably not as great as it was during the Depression, but certainly it's greater than it's ever been during the history of the food bank. And we're also collecting the warm clothing. We're collecting, we don't collect food to give to the food bank, we collect money. We tried collecting food and it just was a great deal of trouble and it was much better to give the money than it was to give actual physical food. But the warm clothing, we do gather that and we give it to a Christian church, nearby Christian church here in Tucker, that has the most amazing closet. And it's not a closet, it's a room. They call it a closet. But they make sure all this clothing is nice and cleaned up and nicely presented, and the homeless and the less fortunate can come and select clothing from there, and for that matter, bedding. Although we don't collect bedding ourselves, but sometimes people bring it anyway. But we just collect the warm clothes. So yes, nominally we start on Thanksgiving Day, but if you have something you want to donate now and you're coming to the center before Thanksgiving Day, bring it. Anything else? Thank you for bringing that up, Swami. It's in this week's newsletter, and it'll be an announcement that I make this coming Sunday. So just a reminder, there is no Saturday class this week. I'll be away from the center at class time. Sunday, the talk is giving thanks. And if you've heard this talk before, it will be different this year. The topic is the same, but a good bit of the content is different. There's some of the content that is saved because it's so good. I mean, it isn't something that I wrote, it's quotes from other people. But so that's what we're up to in the next, Thursday and Friday are my weekend. Those are my days off, so to speak. And Saturday and Sunday we have we'll have the Arati reading in the morning. The Arati, the recital of the Arati in English on Saturday morning, but there'll be no Saturday class. Anything else from anyone before we close? All right, dears. Dearly beloved Lord, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, "Come to me, come to me," offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this your jungle world. Om, Amen. And of course, those who stand by the open door and say, "Come to me, come to me." These are the avatars. These are the incarnations that stand by that open door to the knowledge beyond ordinary knowledge and say, "Come to me," because they can share with us their spiritual treasure. And their spiritual treasure allows us to break this world's chain. They break for us this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. And may we be always in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. Good night, all you lovely people. So good to be with you.
Good night.
Good night, Shankaraji.
Good night, dears.